What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm bringing you guys a video on Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel episode 12. This episode is called Fan Frenzy, and this episode overall was pretty good. It introduced a new thing, and it also went over something that we haven't seen in quite some time. In fact, I don't remember if we've really seen it at all during the spring half of the season, so it's good to see it being introduced again, even though it should have been something more prevalent. But again, it's how they chose to do the story for the season. So we'll get into that. Anyway, let's get started. So the episode begins with Levi being approached by a spokeswoman who wants to have him be the one that will advertise for a burger company. She wants him to go nationwide. She wants him to become even more famous than he already is. Thing is that Levi denies the opportunity, and then he's confronted by this super fan known as Chaz. Chaz wants to hang with him. He remembers getting a letter from him, and he also has the song that he really loves that Levi sang. So the thing is that the letter was written by his manager, so he really doesn't remember the letter that Chaz wrote to him. But the thing is that Chaz still wants to hang with him, even though it was not written by Levi himself. And Levi tries to be a nice guy and says, like, sure, I would love to hang with you sometime, but he doesn't really specify what that means. But Chaz, being a super fan, he thinks, oh, that could mean a lot of things, and maybe he'll really want to hang with me. Well, what happens is that following this, we end up seeing that on the Galaxy Warrior Dome, they introduced the villain for the episode. This monster is going to be called Dreadwolf. Dreadwolf has the special ability of where he can use his claws that he's able to retract out and throw to hit someone and turn them into a werewolf. He ends up doing this without us seeing it initially to Cosmo Royale, who he turns into a werewolf, and when he ends up having a stakeout, Cosmo ends up going to it, grabbing it, trying to eat it. But then when Dreadwolf pulls the claw out of his back, he turns back to normal. So that's something to note. These claws can be removed fairly easily, but at the same time you still have to get to the person that's affected, or the monster, or whatever. So then following this, what ends up happening is that in the meantime, I was saying before that there was that spokesperson that failed to get her request. Well, she ends up looking for another person that she could get to do this, and the person that she actually finds is Victor. Victor is actually eating a burger, and he looks like he could be a great advertising person, someone that could be a good spokesperson for this burger company. And the fact that she mentioned money basically seals the deal right then and there. So he does end up practicing a bunch. In the meantime, what we do end up seeing is that Calvin brings Mick to a hardware shop because Mick needs to get new supplies for his class, because he's the hardware teacher, and what happens, he's the woodshop teacher or whatever, and what happens is that he ends up going there. Calvin ends up seeing a buzz cam, and then he contacts the other Rangers. The other Rangers end up heading off, but first Chaz interrupts, Levi basically saying that, hey, I was wondering if we could take a quick picture with your cheeseburger camera. And what happens is that Levi's like, sure. And then following this, Chaz wants to give him his email so he can send him the picture, but what happens is that Levi's already leaving. So that at this point, what happens is that the Rangers arrive on the scene. They see that there's no monster nearby, but following this, shortly afterwards, the monster appears. The monster ends up attacking the Rangers. We end up seeing the Rangers transform. Levi is fighting Dreadwolf. The other 5 are fighting the Bastrobots. What happens is that Mick ends up appearing on the scene and sees what's happening. He's not happy to see the monsters that are there, but he's still watching. In the meantime, what happens is that Dreadwolf eventually decides that he will choose Levi to be his target, that he'll turn into a werewolf. And what happens is that Levi manages to dodge all 3 of his claws that he throws out, and it ends up hitting a wall, and then bounces off that wall and hits Mick. So at this point, Mick gets affected, and he falls to the ground. So then at that point, the monster retreats because he realized he missed Levi, and he needs to find more claws. So in the meantime, the Rangers end up helping Mick up, trying to bring him to his class and get him ready for his work. So the Rangers arrive at the in their class. They're doing what they're supposed to do, and then suddenly Mick appears, and he looks like a werewolf. At this point, Preston does some magic to hide his face, and they go to the base. And at that point, they end up seeing him, and he's very much so ravenous and very much so like a werewolf. So things are not looking good for Mick right now. At that point, what happens is that the Rangers have to hold him down and remove the claw from his back. They do this, and Mick is turned back to normal. So they know now what the monster's ability is and how to solve the ability that he has, like how to get rid of what he can do to people. So that's something to know. So following this, what does end up happening is that we end up seeing that the Rangers end up having to, like, I said this wrong. The Rangers are trying to deal with a situation. I forget the exact story here. What happens is that eventually Chaz ends up being met by Levi, and Chaz wants Levi to go with him to Metro Plaza to see some of his friends and do some signings or whatever, just because I thought we would be friends, and that's how he was treating it. Like, he thought that maybe because they're like friendly, he would do something like that, even though he never agreed to it. Thing is that Levi's like, just give me some space. I need some time, and you can't just put that on me. I never agreed to this. So it's true, but Levi isn't necessarily the nicest when he talks to him this way, and Chaz is hurt by this, so he ends up going to Metro Plaza alone, and he meets his friends and tells them about what actually happened, and his friends really don't trust him anymore that he knows Levi Weston. In the meantime, what we do end up seeing is that Victor and Monty are there. They're practicing for Victor's audition, and what happens is that suddenly Dreadwolf appears on the scene. Dreadwolf ends up seeing that Chaz, which Chaz, by the way, is actually dressed like Levi, is there, and he thinks if he throws his claws at him, he'll turn into a werewolf. Well, what happens is that he ends up attacking the area. Everyone ends up trying to retreat, and then what happens is that Victor gets a claw in his back, and Chaz gets a claw in his back. So each of them are affected, and then the Rangers end up getting a distress call from Mick, basically saying that there's some activity going on in Metro Plaza, and they realize that they have to go and see what's going on. And they know that Chaz was there, so maybe he was affected, or maybe he saw something. So at that point, what happens is that they arrive on the scene. When they go there, Victor's already left at this point because Monty has helped him to his audition. In the meantime, the other Rangers, all the Rangers arrive on the scene, and they're seeing Dreadwolf and Chaz. Chaz is now a werewolf, and what happens is that Dreadwolf realizes that he didn't get Levi, so he wants to retreat and get more claws, but the other Rangers go after him. And in the meantime, Levi has to deal with Chaz, and he ends up pulling the claw out of his back and says, he says, you were he asks, like, are you okay and everything like that, and he's about to apologize, but then he realizes that he has to go off, and he says, like, I'll talk to you later, Chaz. And then at this point, what happens is that he ends up getting a call from Mick. Mick ends up mentioning that the prism showed a new vision, and this vision was showing that the Gold Ranger can use the Lion Fire armor. So at that point, they realize, maybe we can take advantage of this. So Levi ends up catching up with the other Rangers that are dealing with Dreadwolf. Eventually, Levi calls Brody, telling him that to throw his Lion Fire armor star so that he could use it, because it might actually work. And in this case, they use it, and Levi is able to become the Gold Lion Fire Armor Ranger. So at that point, we end up seeing him in that form. Preston throws his sword, and so that way Levi can use his weapon and Preston's weapon at once, and also just use the abilities of the Lion Fire armor, which is super cool. And so he manages to fight and do some serious damage to Dreadwolf, which is very cool. In the meantime, what we also see is that Victor is at his audition, and initially he's doing fine. He's still not feeling all that well with his wolf stuff in him, and he is doing his audition. He keeps on like stopping because he's feeling the wolf inside him, and then he's doing his audition, and at one point he ends up turning full wolf, does a flip onto a table where there's burgers, and ends up eating all of them, being super messy and everything like that. And the person that found him initially was really like freaked out by this. It's like, who changed these lines? And so there's this kind of interesting situation that happens there. Eventually, though, Levi, in the meantime, ends up dealing with Dreadwolf. He destroys him. Then Dreadwolf is gigantified, and then at that point what happens is that the Rangers end up forming the Ninja Ultrazord. We haven't seen the Ninja Ultrazord in quite some time, and also in general this episode seems a little bit out of place just because of the fact that their Zords should be destroyed, so the fact that the Ultrazord is being used at all really doesn't make a lot of sense, because that was the whole point of those earlier episodes with Foxytron. Foxytron was supposed to make it so that the Zords were destroyed, and that's why these past couple of episodes have not had the Ninja Steel Megazord. It's because of that factor. So it is kind of weird to see that they're using it here, the Ninja Ultrazord, in its standard mode and everything like that. But it's cool to see it return, even though it doesn't make sense. Let's just say that much. It really would make more sense if things were reordered, where this happened earlier on, like probably prior to Foxytron and prior to the actually, it should have happened in spring, honestly, prior to the Galactic Ninjas even being introduced. Because this episode is also more so filler than anything else, so I don't really understand why they didn't do it sooner rather than later. It could have just been how they decided to order things, but I'm just saying that this episode would have made sense to actually happen at an earlier point rather than have it happen now, just because of order of events and what makes sense to have happened. Because there's nothing here that like implies that this should have happened now, like nothing. Just keep that in mind. It really shouldn't have happened now. But anyway, what does end up happening is that the Rangers end up fighting. They use the Ninja Ultrazord. We do end up seeing Levi still in the Lion Fire armor, and they do manage to defeat the monster. And also Levi does a big attack off of the Ninja Ultrazord to destroy the monster as well. So that's all good to see. In the end, what happens is that Chaz is at the Metro Plaza. He's with the people that he was with before. And in this case, Levi finally agrees to do the signing, sing to their friends, and do something nice for him because he feels bad for how he acted, and he was able to save Chaz in the first place. In the meantime, what we also end up seeing is that Victor is in the school now, and what happens is that he is full-on wolf, and Monty tries to bait him with a steak, actually a burger, and what happens is that at that point Monty pulls out the claw from his back, he turns normal, and suddenly that woman that wanted to work with him comes in and says, "Great news, apparently they really love the wolf commercials. They want you to keep on doing that wolf thing, so you're going to have to grow back all that hair. And if you do this, you can go nationwide, you're going to earn $1 million, and you're going to be super successful." So Victor's super excited, except for the fact that he hears the whole idea that he has to grow back the hair, and he realizes that he cannot do it anymore. There's no way for him to do it. So basically at that point, Victor's upset. The woman says, "Oh well, guess we'll have to find someone else," and the episode pretty much ends there. So overall, the episode itself was good. It didn't make sense as far as ordering goes. Like, really, this episode should have happened prior to episode 6, and maybe this episode should have happened just prior to it even. I mean, I don't really remember what episode 5 was right now because it's been a while, but the order of things doesn't make much sense because the Ninja Steel Megazord is supposed to be destroyed at this point, and you even see in the commercial that's been happening at the end of these episodes where they talk about how the Ninja Steel Zords have been destroyed and all that it says that. So it's like, why would you say that? Yet in this episode you see that the Ninja Steel Zords are still being used. You know what I mean? It doesn't make much sense. In other words, the order should be flipped for this episode. This episode should have happened earlier. Otherwise, the episode was great. There was a lot of really good things about it. Sure, we had some goofier Victor and Monty bits in it, but it was fine for what it was, and it was also nice to see the Lion Fire armor being used on Levi now, which is good, because that was something that we weren't sure about when that was going to happen. Again, they've released toys for red and gold. They've also released one for blue, and I forget if they did yellow. I believe they did. They never did pink or white, but in other words, there should be, if things work out, blue hopefully. We don't know yet. Yellow I'm not sure about, but blue people have been hoping for. We'll see. So otherwise that's about it for me, guys. Again, I think that this is out of order, also because of the fact that we don't see Sandy either. That's another thing. I think that's why Sandy wasn't in this episode as well, is because this episode should have happened at a different point. But we'll see. Maybe next episode won't even feature her, and then maybe, who knows. Again, it would be great if Sandy were more of a reoccurring character now, just because she was in the past 2 episodes, but we don't know for sure yet as to what's going to happen. I just think that the order was weird this episode, so just keep that in mind. Otherwise, to me, this episode was pretty good. So please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.